What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Uberkooledgarage. On this week's episode, we're going to continue on the bug, finish off a couple little things, get this thing running quite a bit better, and hopping on some of the bigger projects to get those knocked out. So, I noticed the last couple videos have been pretty low on view count. So, if you guys have any suggestions or comments, what you guys suggest that I do differently with the videos, I would really appreciate it. You guys have been awesome so far. So I want to try and get everything kind of out there a lot more. So if you guys like the videos, feel free to share them. And like I said, if you have some suggestions, just let me know. My email's down in the description. If you are interested in a swap or parts, go ahead and email me or DM me on Instagram as well, and I'll get right back to you. But for now, let's get this bug closer to being on the road. So hope you guys enjoy. Off camera, I went ahead and slid in the floorboards. So you know it's getting pretty darn close when the floors are starting to go in. You can see here that I have a notch out here and then one on each side of the back. That's where the original roll cage what was welded into. So I got to put patches into that stuff. Also went ahead and hooked up the rest of the radiator lines. So you can see on this side it comes down 90s, ties into that, comes across, comes around this. This will actually get strapped up here. That way it's tucked into this channel. And then that loops down, wraps around, and goes up into this. I just have that zip tied for now while I was tightening up all those. I'm going to build a mount back here for the tube, and one probably right here for the tube, and one up front for the tube. That way it all stays where it needs to be. I'll do the same on the other side. A couple of other things have been going on. Pulled the front suspension off. Pulled the rear tires off to finish off the suspension. So I'm gonna weld up the rest of the floor, get all that all patched in, good to go. Get it all sanded down, prime it, finish up the center tunnel, and a couple other things. So one big thing that I've kind of been holding off on is building a alternator mount. So I didn't want this in the stock location. It wouldn't clear the rear firewall that's going to go over this. So the firewall is going to be relatively close to this. Also went ahead and got my other breather lines in there. So my alternator is going to bolt into this bolt here and those two bolts. I'll make a bracket that comes off of this, and it'll kind of sit out here and then kick back in. So I need to make a template for that. That way I can get the alternator in there. This will be the adjustable part of the alternator, so should be able to adjust it from there. And I also went ahead and picked up a belt. So they do sell a kit for this location of alternator. The only issue is it's 220 bucks or so, which, I mean, it's such a simple bracket. I don't feel the need to spend $200 on something that I can just make up real quick. And the belt that they use is a 27.5 inch, and it is a special custom order belt that nobody has, that nobody can get. So this is a belt that I can just run down to O'Reilly and pick up whenever I need it, which makes things a whole lot easier. So I'm going to make the mount for this, and after that, the engine side of everything is done. I went through, finished up the throttle cable,
and started setting up the gas brake and clutch pedal, the whole pedal assembly. Started setting all that stuff up. I still have to go through and clean up wiring in here, but I want to make sure that everything's running properly. And then basically after that, it is finish suspension and put a little bit more weld on this thing, on the chassis itself. That way nothing vibrates apart, nothing breaks, anything, all that stuff's good. And then we'll take this thing for a drive. So let's go ahead and finish off the little bits that I have left and see if we can't fire this thing up again and get it to run a little bit better. And then we should be looking pretty darn good. Got my template all made up. Went ahead and made one out of steel. This is 1/4 inch plate that I had laying around, so this was a scrap piece. It is super thick. I did not want this moving around at all. I do have to go pick up new hardware for it, but worked out really good. Also went ahead and made just tack this piece up. So this piece is going to get welded onto here, roughly like that. And then I'll be welding some gussets to hold all of this in place. So that worked out really good. I'll go through and clean it all up. As you can see, the motor is super dirty. All the paint is flaking off due to me not really prepping it good enough. So like I said before, the motor's gonna get pulled out, completely cleaned, probably repainted the correct way, get everything all situated. Everything's super dusty at the moment because I've been using the grinder, but I'll blow all this stuff off, and once everything's good and situated, we'll pull this thing out and start cleaning everything up. But I'm gonna go ahead and get this tacked into its spot, and then we'll build gussets, and the alternator should be ready to rock. Alternator is all mounted up. The bracket came out awesome. Painted it black, finished welding it. I also added a gusset back there that you can't really see, but it all worked out really good. Everything's lined up. The belt is perfect. I actually do have some adjustment with this one. So what I'm going to do is, this is temporary. I'm going to order a left to right threaded heim joint for there. That way I can just tighten it by twisting the screw. So I'll get that in there later. I'll order those, get different sizes and stuff. Another thing that I did is I lengthened this oil line here. It was leaking from the sandwich plate down there, so tighten that up, which gave it a different position. So ended up having to remake this line, which was no big deal. So that's fixed. If you noticed in the radiator video, I had a small leak right down here. Went ahead and got that all sealed up and ready to go. I also went ahead and cleaned up a bunch of wiring. Yes, it is still a mess. As you can see, there's quite a few bundles of wire everywhere. This whole panel is temporary, so I don't want to cut and shorten any of these wires until I get the actual car together. But for temporary, this works. You also notice there's a bunch of wire nuts on there. Don't ever use wire nuts in your car. I am using these temporarily. That way I don't have to put connectors on all of these until I get a final location inside the actual chassis of the car. So that's all temporary, but it gets it to run and it'll fire right up. So I believe the only thing I have left to do is tie in the fuel lines to the fuel cell, and then we should be able to fire this up and actually let it run for quite a while. So I'll do quite a bit of tuning on it just to get everything situated and where it needs to be. And then once I know everything runs, then I'll go through, I'll loom up the entire wiring harness, get that all sealed up and clean, and then I'm going to move on to suspension, or actually I'll probably end up moving over to the floors, finish off the floors, finish off the center tunnel, get all of that done, and then get that painted. And then I'll probably end up doing some kill mat over the entire thing, just to get some sound deadening on there. And then I'll move on to suspension and finishing off the shift linkage stuff. But after that, then I believe we should be ready to take this thing down the street. I'm gonna weld up quite a few of the actual joints, that way they don't move. I'll do final weld on everything after I pull the whole thing apart, and then I'll get it ready for paint, the cage for paint. So looking pretty good, and we are getting really, really close. So starting to get really excited about this. Okay guys, so I'm in the car now. I went ahead, got the wideband hooked up. I got the battery voltage gauge hooked up. Went ahead and changed a couple settings. So I'm gonna go over here and hit start tuning. Go ahead and turn on the fuel pump. So we'll just go ahead and see what the computer changes. Try and let off the throttle a little bit, let the RPMs drop. Everything looks good so far. Alrighty guys, so I finally got her idling. I don't know how well you can hear me, but idling really good. One thing that confuses me is the alternator is at like 16 volts. So it's a little odd. I'll have to look into that. But as of right now, it's tuning itself. Probably adding fuel at the moment. So Everything's working good. It sounds really good. Very, very, very aggressive. So she's running really good. Okay guys, so you saw me tack in the driver's side suspension up front. Still playing around with angles and brackets and stuff like that, but everything's looking like it's working out okay. Steering's going to be a whole different scenario. I'm going to have to adjust that and move it. Also went ahead and tacked in the passenger side, just kind of in the same general location. The upper arm is not tacked in at all, but got the coilover tacked in there. And I tacked this stuff in too low. So as of right now, there is a 4x4 underneath the front. So if you guys don't know, that's 3.5 inches under the front. Without that block in there, it drops down to 2.5 inches. Ground clearance. So definitely too low. Well, for this car, it's too low. My Gia was probably 1/2 inch off the ground in the front, but with this car and this much power, I'd rather not scrape and hit absolutely everything. So I'm shooting for that 3.5 inches up front. It's got roughly 4 in the rear. So you notice these are regular tabs on the coilovers. I think what I'm going to do is went ahead and made that bracket. So that will replace those. And then that bar will get cut shorter. Another Heim joint on the end. So it'll almost be like a strut bar up top that keeps this suspension from pushing the cage or any of that stuff in. So I'm going to make a couple more of these brackets, weld those in. Rear suspension's pretty darn close to done. So I just need to finish welding out the tabs and add in a crossbar for the upper. So rear suspension's really close. Front suspension's getting extremely close. So after that, it's steering, brakes, and finish welding in the floor pans. And then we should be ready to take this thing on its first drive. Alright guys, so that's all I have for you on this episode. Next episode, we will be jumping into the new project. So it is currently in my driveway. I'm looking at a motor and a transmission here in the shop. So it should be a really fun project. Be a really cool car when it's done. I think you guys will enjoy it quite a bit. It's a little bit different of a swap. So until next week, we will see you guys later.
Peace out, guys.